Hi everyone. Um, Welcome back to
Hi.
our channel again. I've got a nice person every time. There's always a fantastic person here. So I've got Oceana here with
Yeah.
me, and Oceana is a release analyst. She's a colleague of mine. She's a very good friend of mine too, and has experience working with agile projects and in the agile space. So hi Oceana, do you want to introduce yourself to us?
Hi. Okay, sure. Hi, I'm Oceana, and I currently work as a release analyst. So, I've been in the role about almost 2 years now, but previous to that, I moved around the company and I got exposure to different parts of the company. So, I have a broad set of skills.
Oh, nice. Thank you. By the way, Oceana is from Nigeria, so if I'm wondering where the name is from, she's from Nigeria. She's
Yes.
Nigerian, very much Nigerian, right?
Yeah. Yes, I
Yes.
am. Yeah.
All right then. And so, what's the release analyst? Let's start by that. What's a release analyst?
Okay. Okay, so a release analyst is somebody who, same as data analysis, but we do it specific to releases. So when you have changes in software or in applications that you need to deploy, you have to go through a whole process like development, making sure you raise change requests, making sure that your users are aware of the change. So the whole process of doing all of that and then putting the change into production would be classed as a release. So my job is to analyze how well the teams are going through the whole process, what their bottlenecks are,
Okay.
and what parts they need support in, and just making sure that everything is ready for the business during the week.
During the week or during maybe is it every week or generally or
Not every week that we have a release. So some, depending on what applications, some applications have more changes that have to be made to them. So they might release every
oh,
weekend to be ready for the week for that business part, or they might release once a month, and then in that case, every month we would have like a planning session to get ready for when they're releasing that weekend. So for the rest of the month, the applications are available for the business as well. So it just depends on how important the application is. So we have something called crown
okay.
jewels. So how important they are to the business and how often the business uses it, and also what environments and
Oh,
what times that we can also support those releases as well.
right. Okay. Yeah, with the environment. Okay, I think I understand now a bit more. But how did you hear about this? How did you get into release management? Or what were you doing previously?
Okay, so I first started off on a graduate scheme years ago, and it was an IT graduate scheme. So what they did was they placed us in different parts of the IT department to get exposure to the different teams and see what we
Okay.
liked. And I tended to move around to places where there was a lot of analysis, or I could use new tools to like manipulate the data and get metrics out of them. So my last role was a Jira administrator. So that means that I did a lot of work in terms of agile and also customizing the system to work for the
Yeah.
teams. So with that in mind, I understood how the teams worked a bit more, and I moved into release management with the knowledge of how their processes kind of work and how they should be using the tools. So that really helped in terms of my understanding and all the different applications we
All
had.
right. So you that means you I mean what you had to learn a lot about Jira and what have you. Right.
Yes,
Okay.
yeah. But the good thing is that there are loads of resources online, so it wasn't too
Okay.
difficult. And personally, I'm someone who likes to learn new tools, and I tend to pick up things quite quickly if I'm practicing them
Okay.
a lot. So for me, Jira wasn't too difficult to learn, but then learning Jira first, and then also learning Agile around Jira and how to use those together really helped in moving into the release process. Because then I could then adapt to the different teams, because not all our teams are the same, so they work in slightly different ways. So having that adaptability was important as well, which is what I learned in that role as a Jira administrator, because I had to deal with different teams and different
Hmm.
stakeholders.
Okay. That's that sounds very interesting. But what do you mind if I what you studied in uni?
Yes. So I studied accounting, which is completely different to this. And I also did business management. So it was called international management at the time, but basically
Yeah.
business management. But when I first joined the graduate scheme, I thought it was across the whole business. So we would be in the insurance parts
Yeah.
as well, and we get exposure to other business parts of it. But it was mostly for IT. But for some reason, I liked it so much because I've always liked IT. So I was like, I'll just stay in this part and see where I can go. And then once I started moving around the different teams, I decided that I wanted to stay in something with IT or with
Hmm.
tech. so I didn't want to explore the business part of it. But there's still the opportunity to do FinOps, which is finances for operations in
Mm.
IT, which would still kind of make use of my accounting degree as well.
Okay. Right. So basically, it's not like you had to learn how to code or one thing or the other before you started working with Jira and all that.
Um, No, I didn't, but I did have to have a tiny bit of technical knowledge. So there was like at some points there was a learning curve in terms of learning terminology. So when I first joined, we had to all do the iTool management course, so iTool 4 Foundation. And that was a bit of a learning curve because there were loads of terms I hadn't come across
Mm.
before. But once I learned that and then I started seeing it being put into practice. So for example, our change management systems and the meetings we go to called CAB, like every I think we have it like every week or something. So once I started seeing those terms and the different methodologies put into
Mm.
practice, it made a lot more sense. So I wouldn't say you necessarily have to have the know-how beforehand, but you have to be willing to learn as you go
Mm.
along because there are always new terms coming
Right.
up. And the IT is so vast that there's just so much to learn. But then I feel like you can find your own space and kind of like work with it. So it's not too difficult.
Yeah. So obviously, from someone coming from accounting and accounting background, business management,
Yeah.
going into IT tech, basically. Um, there must have been a lot of challenges. What kind of challenges did you face, and how did you overcome them?
So aside the learning, I think probably maybe one of the first challenges was when we were first put into grad scheme. I don't know if this is verified, but based on my perception, I think we were split up depending on what we studied.
Mm.
So those of us that studied more soft skills like, accounting,
Mm.
business, philosophy, history, we were put into a certain part of the business that meant that we were dealing more with customers and we were more customer centric and we were like front
Mm.
facing. And then those of them that did like engineering, maths, all those STEM um, things. So mine wasn't, I don't think was counted as STEM, it was counted more as
Mm.
business. So they would be put into like the technical side of it where they had to do more, a bit more coding, a bit more talking to
Mm.
developers. So I did find that was a challenge initially because although I like talking to people, I like the customer, I prefer the technical side. So I'm the type of person that I like to get on with my
Mhm.
work like quietly at the
Excuse
side
me.
and I don't want to have to talk to loads of people
Yeah.
about it because I like to explore new tools and look for solutions. So for me, that was kind of hard initially because it meant that I had to put myself out there, talk to loads of different
Mm.
people, which I necessarily might not have spoken to again after that specific position that
Yeah.
I was in. So that would probably have been the biggest challenge. But aside that, I think everything else wasn't too bad just because I already had an interest in
Okay.
tech. So learning the stuff for me was almost like a game or a hobby rather than it being something that I definitely had to do for the
Mm.
job. So if you don't have interest in it, you will
You
kind of
struggle.
struggle to learn the stuff
Right.
quickly.
So
So you have to find some
it's
interest or find a reason you have to do it.
not just money.
Yes, exactly. So even sometimes you get to a point where the money is like, even if the money is making
Hmm.
sense, like after a while you have to like there's something they call silent quitting. So you start to feel like you don't want to
Yeah.
work anymore or you're not just as productive as you should be, even if the money is great. And at a point you've made enough or you've like to sustain you for a while that you might want to take a
Mm.
break. So I would say that just make sure you have an interest in it. Like the money is great, but also look at your career progression as well because you might get a role where you get a lot of money and then the next stage for you to jump to, there's not actually that much increase in your salary. Whereas if you're taking a lower role, the jump between that and the next role might be way
Mm.
better. So you have to consider all your options as well and your interests as
Right.
well.
Okay. So as as a release analyst, right, working in an agile setting,
Yeah.
um,
Mm.
how do I put this in a very easy way? Where I'm sure there's a lot of pushback, right? So
Yes.
how do you
So
factor in that the fact that we're trying to be agile and also trying to get things work at the same time?
so I would probably let me give an example of Azure basic
Yeah.
Azure DevOps. So that's something that we've recently started implementing, and we're also going through the whole agile transformation as well. So getting the teams to think more agile, work
Hmm.
in more agile ways. So developers, so agile first originated for based on what I understand from like the whole development cycle and software engineering and all
Hmm.
of that. But the problem we're having is that the developers, even though they're used to Agile, they know about Agile, they're used to working in a
Yeah.
certain way. And just because the business is putting forward this whole
Yeah.
Agile thing, they don't necessarily see the use for them in changing the ways that they're working. Because if they're delivering on time, they're delivering a certain amount that is agreed, and they're still working, and their performance according to how they're measuring
Mm-hmm.
is fine. They don't see the value in implementing Agile in
Mm-hmm.
their team. So a lot of the times it's kind of convincing them that Agile will make their processes better in the
Mm-hmm.
long run, even if they might not see any short-term wins. But eventually, when everybody else is working Agile, it will also make it easier for them to collaborate with the other
Yeah.
people as well. So I think the first thing is the mindset. So getting people to understand why it's important. And because I work in a team, like we're quite small in our team, and we mostly work as like supervisors, or like almost like a removed kind of
Mm.
role where we oversee whatever you're doing. We're not in the day-to-day workings of each of the teams, so it can be hard to convince them, because you have to practice what you
Yeah.
preach, but what we practice is slightly different to what we're
Mm.
preaching. So sometimes I have to look at examples from other teams and kind of explain it like I work in that team, even if I
Mm.
don't. So a lot of it is understanding and trying to show them why it would make
Okay,
sense.
so there are times where you also have to go into sprint planning of some other teams and their normal rituals, daily stand up and all that.
Exactly.
Just to,
Yes, so I have to understand what they're doing so I can kind of use that to explain to other teams, or even see where there are areas for improvements as well as an outsider. So maybe something they might not have noticed, but would not only help them, but would help me in how I report on the metrics on their
right.
performance.
Okay. Well, as a release analyst, I'm sure you must have seen so many, or you must have heard so many myths about your role. What are the common myths you hear that, well, this is what release analyst is all about, but in all honesty, that's not actually what it's all about.
So I mean, I have seen a few videos on
Yeah.
Instagram showing that a release analyst, we don't really do that much. So we come in, basically sip our coffee or
Yeah.
our tea, and then just wait till the end when something's about to go into the environment, and we literally just click on a button, and then we're done for the
Mm.
day. I mean, it sounds like a very
Yeah.
easy like way, and it's very oversimplified, but there's a lot more that goes into it. So our job is, I would say, looking at the different parts of the release and providing solutions basically. So not every time there might be like loads of work to do. So maybe this week you might not have many releases, or maybe for 2 months there's not
Mm-hmm.
that much work to do. But while there's no work, there's still stuff you can improve on. You can still report on stats. You can think about how you can restructure your environment strategy. So there's always work to be done. It's not always active
Mm.
work. So I find that, like, for example, in our team, like the work we do is very much behind the scenes. Like it's almost like keeping the machine going, like ticking and maintenance, rather than very like loud, oh bang, we did
Mm.
this or we did
Mm.
that. So it's very much like where I want to say like we're key workers of
Right.
IT. So we don't always have to be at the forefront, and we don't always have to be plastered anywhere. But without us, and without us keeping people in check, things probably wouldn't go as good as they could go.
Yeah. Well,
So
is there has there been any situation where if there was no, like, you feel if there was no release analyst, this whole project would have gone bonkers?
so I mean, we have had a few projects where when they initially started the project, so the project manager, they looked at all their resources and got funding for everybody, but they hadn't really factored in a release manager or a release
Mm.
analyst into their resource planning. And so when by the time they got to towards the end of the project, they decided to, contact us and let us know. And because we had been contacted so late in the process, it then meant that we are trying to play catch up, and we had to go back and look at how they had started from the start. And we started finding loopholes of things that, like, evidences they didn't
Mm.
submit, things they hadn't planned properly. They hadn't even asked about the environments to book it, to
Yeah.
see whether somebody else
Yeah.
had booked it and what other apps would be affecting. So all things like that would then delay their release, because the project had to be finished.
Mm-hmm.
Like senior management wanted
Yeah.
it finished, but because they hadn't done the due process and involved us from the start, it just meant that they were delayed by a week or two.
Mm.
And luckily, things went into place, like the changes were deployed, everything went fine. But if we hadn't been proactive and helped them patch the things that they hadn't
Mm.
done, then that would have been a
Yeah.
problem. If there was no release manager at all, that change could have gone into production without the right approvals, without the right things, and it could have probably broken the system for the whole
Ooh.
business. And that could have led to a fine. And it's quite a big program, basically. So
Wow.
definitely a release manager is important, even if you don't want to have them, you don't see the value in them, they're definitely important as the last final checks to make sure that, and it also means that we can kind of share accountability with you as well, because if we've checked it, we can, vouch for you and be like, we checked this works, we're sure of this, and we can stand on this. If you don't have that last, support, if something goes wrong, then you're taking it all by yourself. So if anything, you want to share the blame with somebody else. So yeah.
Well, I mean, so for someone that has 2 years experience, it's almost as you sound like you've got 10 years experience already.
Yes, I don't have anywhere near
I know.
that. Like, there's so many applications I haven't come across, so many tool stacks. But it's just based on my interactions with like the different teams. Because lucky for me, we get to interact with loads of different apps and loads of different teams as well. And because some of the people I've interacted with, they've also played release manager
Right.
roles, but they're now just assigned to
Programs.
specific programs or projects. But they played it in their previous companies or wherever they came from. So I'm able to just learn about what they talk about and also help me as well. And it also helps that not only am I doing release analyst stuff, I work a lot with the DevSecOps governance as well. So a lot of my role also revolves around process, governance, audits. So I'm able to interact with other teams and kind of critique what they're doing and their processes and seeing how that can be improved for other teams as
Okay.
well.
Yeah, we talked about tools. So, what tools do you? I know there are loads of tools you use, but what are the major ones? The ones that that you cannot do without using as a release
Yeah.
analyst.
First would be Power BI. Power BI, Power BI, Power BI. I started learning Power BI years ago, and I mean, there's
Before you
a couple
started
of
working
problems
as
with
a
the
release analyst.
software. No, yes, well, in when I started the grad scheme, that's when I started learning how to use
Right.
Power BI. And at that time, nobody was really using Power BI. So it was like we had a Microsoft subscription, and it was one of the things that was provided as part of our subscription, but we hadn't really explored on how to use it. And one day, someone was like, "Oh, can you put together this report? And you have to make sure you put it together every, 2 or 3 weeks as part of my
Okay.
role." And I just looked at it and it was just going to take me so long to manually calculate everything. So I was like, why can't I just automate this and then I can get on with other stuff? And one of my managers at the time, she introduced me to Power BI. She's like, oh, this might solve your problem, but she doesn't really know how to use it like that. So I'll have to learn it. And I went away, learned it, found that I could connect it to loads of different things. And after that, I just kept using it.
Wow.
So Power BI is definitely one of them. Jira or any other software work management tools. So those would be helpful. So at the moment, I use Jira and Azure
Okay.
DevOps. I've previously used GitHub as well. So that is a bit more simplified than the other two
Okay.
options. I know there are other options out there as well, but I think my advice would be find what works for you, but also think about how all your different tools integrate. Ideally, it would be great to have. So for us, we have like Microsoft tools. So we have all the Microsoft tools you could think of, and they all integrate with themselves, meaning that whenever we need to pass data from one tool to another tool, it makes it a bit
Right.
easier. But then when you start having different tools like ServiceNow, Azure DevOps, Jira, all of that, just make sure you think about how they all integrate with
Right.
each other. And also, as an analyst, you need to think about where you're bringing in your data from as well and how you ideally want to make your data work for you and for your users.
Makes sense. Makes sense. I'm well. For those of you that care to know, Oceana is my Power BI teacher, and I
Yes.
really find it difficult to learn Power BI because of all the calculation. It's almost like coding, but it's not coding, but it's almost like coding for me. But yeah,
Yeah.
I'll get there. I'll get there soon. I'll get there.
Yeah.
But let's talk about the fun parts now. So we all these things that we
Okay.
do, you're like almost a superhero for the back end team for the organization for projects and all of that. And sometimes you're busy,
Yeah.
sometimes you're not so busy. But at the same time, you're still busy.
Yes.
Um,
Mm.
the salary range is pretty good, right? Or for the workload, what do you think is salary range wise?
I think that's an interesting question because I would say that based on what I've seen on in the other companies, how they put out the jobs and everything, the salary is what I currently get. So my salary range is on par with what some of the other companies provide. However, I think it also depends on what your role description is as well. So, for example, my role description doesn't include stuff like
Right.
AWS. It only includes a tiny bit of like GCP, and I know there are other tools like Kubernetes and
Mm.
all of those. So, I don't come into contact with those type of tools, and because of that, my salary might be slightly less than somebody else who has to deal with those type of tools on a daily basis because those are like heavy stack
Okay.
tools, right? So, I think my salary range is okay. It could be a lot better. Like,
Obviously, everybody's
I
salary rate
also
could be
think
a
like
lot
because
better.
of it could be better, yes, but also because of my workload as well. So some days I have like a lot of work, and when I say a lot, I don't mean like just in one particular
Feel. Yeah.
section or one particular topic. It's like spread across different teams, and there are different things I'm helping different people with. So on days like that, I feel like my salary is nowhere near what it needs to be. Because if I can do all these different things, then surely I should even be charging per different thing I'm doing. But obviously, that's not how
Mm.
it works. But yeah, so some days I feel like it's okay. Other days I feel like it could be better, and I feel like I'm not reaching my full
Okay.
potential. But if I was reaching my full potential, I probably should be earning double what I'm earning. So I'm able to only give half potential because of what I'm paid, basically. So if you want to get like the full potential, you pay me more. So I could definitely be paid more, but my salary isn't bad at all. Like it's
Yeah,
decent,
it's
it's
different. So,
nice.
but for an average, I won't say average. Let me put a decent years of amount of years of experience for um resource analyst.
I would
Yeah.
say, hmm, I would say for my okay. So speaking from my
Mm.
personal view. So because of how many years I've spent, so I've been working for almost six
Okay.
years now. I would say that I'm definitely earning less than my peers because of the amount of time I've worked. However, I will say that because I have also moved around different
Mm.
roles as well, so I haven't spent more than like maybe 2 years in a particular
Mm.
role, meaning that when jobs ask for experience, like 3 or 4 to 5 years experience in a particular role, I wouldn't match that criteria because I haven't spent long enough in that
Mm.
particular role. Although I might know more than the people who have because I've been
A lot
exposed to a
more.
lot more.
Yeah.
So exactly. So because of that, that has kind of like restricted my earning potential as well
Mm.
because that some jobs that I would normally apply for, I'm automatically taken out of it because of that experience thing. However, if I did have so if I had stayed in one role for this whole time, my salary should be a lot more than it currently is. So I'm talking like, hundreds
Mm.
of pounds,
hundred
hundred
thousand
thousands
pounds.
of
Yeah.
pounds and all of that. And exactly, and I should probably even be looking at moving to companies in America because they pay a lot better
Why does
over there.
everyone want to go to America
So
from the UK?
because they pay better. The pay is better once you can sort out your healthcare and your insurance and all of that. And if you're lucky enough that your company funds that for you, then you don't have to worry about paying it from your personal
Yeah.
pay. So there's that, and there's also the contracting option as well. So being a contractor in UK, which means that you can decide what things you spend your money on rather
Mm.
than relying on the employee benefits that your company
Yeah.
gives you, and you can potentially earn more back for
But would you
yourself.
say this? I mean, for a lot of people that are coming, we have brothers and sisters, cousins, uncles, aunties coming in from Nigeria or any other part of the world, not just Nigeria, India. So, for people that come
Yes.
into the UK or to Canada or to the US, they
Yeah.
and the background is different. Everything is different, right? The system is different. You did have a chance of
Yeah.
getting a job as a release analyst in the UK.
Yeah, definitely. I think so I also think it depends on your
Right.
background as well because if you already have a technical background or you've previously been a software developer or something that is quite technical, so means that you already have the domain knowledge, then it's just getting the analysis part and making sure that you can sort that out as well. Or even if you're a data analyst and you want to move into release, you either have to have the domain knowledge in analysis or domain knowledge in something IT and
Mm.
technical. So I think that would definitely help. I mean, it's not impossible to come from a role where you don't have any technical
Yeah.
knowledge at all, although it's a bit of a learning curve, and how you progress will much depend on how quickly you learn and how much extra work you do out of
Okay.
hours. So if you get yourself up to speed, get all your certifications, whatever you need to progress in that particular role, then it's definitely doable. However, if like I would personally recommend that if you are coming from abroad and you're coming into to work in UK or to work somewhere else, it's probably easier for you to go to a non-technical role, so something that's not as technical, so maybe like product owner or even product analyst or something that is a bit more soft
Right.
touch than something so technical straight away, because it's going to be like you're moving to a different country, you're trying to just
Mm-hmm.
familiarize yourself,
Mm-hmm.
acclimatize, and then having to learn all of this, spend so much time getting these certifications. It's a
Mm-hmm.
lot
Mm-hmm.
initially. So for the first year or two, I would suggest going into a slightly
Mm-hmm.
easier role, something more softer that you can just learn about the
Yeah.
company. You can almost like
Mm-hmm.
relax. And then once you know that you're settled and
That
you
you can
know you have like
switch.
a whole routine, then go into something more
Yeah.
challenging. Exactly. And then from even release analyst, you can start going to like release manager, and then going to other like
Yeah.
managerial roles, because you know how the company works and you know how people should be working as well.
Yeah, I think I buy that because a lot of people just feel, well, I can do this, so yeah, I love it, so let me just go into it, and then they get stuck
Exactly.
out or get burnt out, and then
Yes.
discouragement comes in, and then they find themselves doing Uber or
Exactly.
working in the warehouse or something like that.
Other things.
Yeah,
Yes.
so
Exactly.
it's just easy to
So
go through the softer route and then boom, work your way through.
yes,
Uh, yeah,
exactly. And also, I would also say, also look for companies where you have people from your same culture, or people
mm,
that you probably would get along with, because it makes the transition a bit easier as well. Because we always have like company events, or different people bring, like, so for example, in our company we have events, and sometimes we have cultural days where people cook and bring in
yeah,
food. So things like that also help you to feel less
okay,
homesick, and also let you get introduced to other people from, and they might even have some little secrets or little things to help you move up the company a bit
right.
faster, and to get where you need to go
Mm,
faster as well. So just always having someone that's from your country or from your
yeah.
culture that's already done it would make it so much easier for you.
Yeah, so just have someone in your corner.
Yeah.
You can basically, yeah,
Exactly.
just someone to
Yes.
hold your hand to.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, I mean, this has
Yeah.
been very informative for even
Mm-hmm.
for me too, because I didn't really understand what a release
Yeah.
analyst does. Even if I'm an agile
Yeah.
coach, I know what you do. I know, but the in depth of it and how important you are.
Yeah.
Um,
Mm.
now I understand better. And
Yeah.
thank you for the advice you're giving people that want to, become a release analyst or just want to get into tech. And
Yes.
thank you for joining us. Thank you for taking out time. I know you're
All
busy, um, out of your busy schedule
right.
to come and talk to us and um, pour yourself out. So
Yeah. All
thank
right.
you.
Thank you for
Thank
having
you. All
me.
right then. See you all later. Take it easy.
Right.
Bye
Okay.
bye.
All right. Bye. Thank you.